At my son's Little League banquet, my brother's kids got season tickets, my sister's daughter got a gold bracelet, and Mom handed my boy a plastic medal from a drawer. Dad said, "That's more than he earned." I snapped the medal in half, looked at my son, and by morning, my brother was begging every parent to delete the clip before the league saw it. My name is James Hadley. I build custom kitchen cabinets out of a small shop 2 miles outside Bellington, Ohio. I'm 36. I have a son named Owen. His mother left when he was 4 and never sent a birthday card after, so I'm the only person in his life who has ever shown up. That sentence is the whole reason this story happens. Owen plays second base for the Bellington Bears, the local Little League team I help coach as an assistant. He is small for his age, but he runs like the ball owes him money. He hit .312 his last season. He played every single inning he was eligible for. 3 weeks ago, the head coach told me Owen had been voted season MVP by unanimous vote of the coaching staff. The medal was supposed to be engraved. The league office handled the engraving. Everyone at that table knew it was coming. That is what made what my mother did so loud. The banquet was held in the back hall of Donato's, a place that does pasta dinners for $40 a head and lets the league use the back room for free if you order enough wine. 42 families, bright string lights, folding chairs, a laminated program on every plate. My parents had insisted on hosting the family table, which meant my brother Wesley, his wife Brielle, their 2 boys, my sister Rayanne, her husband, their daughter, my father, my mother, me, and Owen. Wesley sat at the head. He had on a navy blazer he wore for board meetings. He's an assistant coach for the Bellington Hawks, the older division, and he sits on the local Little League board. He cares about that board the way some men care about their last name. Before dinner, my father stood up and said the family had brought a few things for the kids. Wesley's 2 boys went first. He handed each of them a leather folder. Inside the folder, season tickets to the Cleveland Guardians. Field level. Wesley's older boy hooped loud enough that 2 tables turned to look. My father grinned and said, "Earned it, didn't they?" His older boy plays for the Hawks. He hit .180 last season. He missed 9 games for travel soccer. Owen led our division in walks. Then it was Rayanne's daughter's turn. My mother pulled out a velvet box, the kind jewelry stores use when they want you to feel something. Inside the box, a gold bracelet with a tiny baseball charm hanging off it. The girl is 6. She has never played a single inning of Little League. Mom slid it onto her wrist and said, "So you'll always remember the family that loves you most." Owen sat very still next to me. I could feel him not breathing. Then my mother turned to him. She didn't reach into a bag. She didn't reach into the box she had pulled the bracelet from. She reached down into the side drawer of the buffet table, the drawer Donato's keeps spare crayons and birthday candles in, and she pulled out a plastic medal, the kind they hand out at toddler birthday parties. The ribbon was red and frayed. The medal said number 1 in raised plastic letters that had been painted gold and were already chipping at the edges. She held it out to him with both hands like she was doing him a favor. "For trying," she said. My father chuckled, the kind of chuckle that means the joke is coming. He took a slow sip of his beer. He looked at my son. Then he looked at me. "That's more than he earned," he said. 3 things happened in the next 5 seconds. First, Owen reached out and took the plastic medal because he is 8 years old and he's been raised to be polite even when he's being humiliated. Second, I saw 2 phones at the table behind us tilt up. They had been recording the gift reveals. Other parents had been recording too. Wesley had told them to. He liked when the gifts looked good on camera. Third, I made a decision I had been making in pieces for about 2 years. I reached across the table. I took the plastic medal out of my son's hand, gentle as I could manage. I held it up so the room could see it. Then I snapped it in half. The plastic cracked sharp enough that the table next to ours went quiet. I set both halves on my father's plate, right next to his garlic bread. I looked at Owen. I said, "Your real medal is coming. The league is mailing it. It is engraved with your name, and it is heavier than this whole table." He looked up at me. He nodded once. I stood up. I picked up my son. I walked out of Donato's with him on my hip like he was 4 years old again. Behind me, I heard Wesley say something sharp under his breath. I heard my mother make a small wounded sound. I heard a fork hit a plate. I did not turn around. In the parking lot, Owen asked if I was mad at him. I told him no. I told him I had never been less mad at anyone in my life. I buckled him in. I drove us home. I made him grilled cheese. I let him watch one episode of his show. I tucked him in, and I sat on the edge of his bed for a long time. Then I went to my desk, and I opened the folder I had been keeping for 2 years. I want to back up. I had not been blind about my family. I had been documenting. 2 summers ago, after a Memorial Day cookout where my mother made a separate, smaller plate for Owen because the burgers were big and growing boys waste them, I started taking notes. Not because I was planning anything, because I'm a woodworker, and the only way I know how to handle a thing is to measure it first. I had a folder on my laptop labeled Family. Inside, there were dated screenshots, photos, a few text threads, and a running document where I wrote down every favoritism event in plain language with the date next to it. What I did not realize at the time was that I had been collecting evidence. I also had a second folder. That folder was about Wesley. Wesley owns a small auto repair shop on Route 14 called Hadley & Sons. The "and Sons" is decorative. He has no sons in the business. 2 years ago, the Bellington Little League Board, of which my brother is the treasurer, had approved a new sponsorship policy. Local businesses could pay $2,400 a season to be the named sponsor of a team and have their logo on the jerseys. The Hawks, my brother's team, were sponsored by Hadley & Sons. So were the Cardinals. So were the Pirates. 3 of the 8 teams in the older division. All sponsored, on paper, by my brother's auto shop. Except Hadley & Sons does $180,000 a year in revenue. I know because I built the cabinets in his office, and I saw the QuickBooks file open on his computer. He could not have afforded $7,200 a season in sponsorships out of his own business. The money was being routed. I had not figured out the whole mechanism. But I had a folder, and I had a few photographs of invoices I had taken when he asked me to help him move filing cabinets last spring. 3 of those invoices were from a dental practice in Mansfield. One was from a roofing company in Akron. None of them had any reason to be paying my brother's auto shop. I had been sitting on those photos for a year and a half, telling myself I was being paranoid, telling myself it wasn't my business. That night, after the banquet, I stopped telling myself that. By midnight, 3 different parents had texted me clips. Tasha Pellman, who sat 2 tables over and whose daughter pitched for a team. A man named Greg, whose name I didn't know, but who had been at the table directly behind ours. And Brielle's own sister, who I'd met twice, and who had apparently been recording her nephew's reaction shot when she caught the whole thing. The clips were clean. You could hear my father's voice clearly. You could see my mother pull the plastic medal out of the buffet drawer. You could see the moment Owen's face changed. You could see me snap the medal in half. I did not post anything that night. That was important. I went to bed. At 6:47 the next morning, my phone started buzzing. It was Wesley. I let it ring. He called 4 more times before 7 o'clock. By 7:14, he had switched to texting. By 7:30, he was begging. James, please don't post anything. Please. Whatever Dad said he didn't mean. James, the league has a code of conduct. You know that. James, I'm asking you as your brother. Don't do this. James, I'm calling every parent right now and asking them to delete it. That last one told me what I needed to know. He wasn't worried about my parents. He wasn't worried about Owen. He was worried about himself. Because the Little League District had a code of conduct and adult misconduct at official league events was a reportable offense. And Wesley was an assistant coach and a board member, and he had been at the table when it happened, and he had not stood up. I did not respond to any of his texts. At 8 o'clock, I called the head coach of the Bears, a man named Ramon, and I told him what had happened. He had not been at the banquet. His daughter had been sick. He listened in silence. When I was done, he said, I want every clip you have. I want them by 9. I'm calling the district. I forwarded him the 3 clips at 8:11. At 8:40, Ramon called the district commissioner. The district commissioner is a woman named Pauline. Wait, Pauline is on Saad's band name list. I'm using Janet. Janet Ortiz. She watched the clips. She called Ramon back at 9:15 and asked him a single question. Is the man in the navy blazer at the head of the table on our board? He said yes. She said, then we have a board meeting tonight. I want to talk about Wesley's morning because I learned about most of it later in pieces. He had woken up at 5:30. which is unusual for him. Brielle told me later he hadn't slept. He had pulled up the parents' Facebook group at 6 o'clock and seen that Tasha had posted one of the clips with a caption that just said, "Anyone else feels sick about this?" 11 comments under it already. By 6:30, the clip was on 3 other group chats. By 7 o'clock, it had made it to the Hawks parents group, which Wesley moderated. He started calling parents in alphabetical order. He told some of them my father had a stroke and didn't mean it. He told others my mother was on a new medication. He told one mother that I was unstable and going through a custody dispute, which was a lie so specific and so easy to disprove that it actually made things worse for him. That mother screenshot the call summary and sent it to Tasha. By 9:30, his story had collapsed 3 different ways with 3 different audiences. By 10 o'clock, the parents group had the receipts side by side. By 10:30, someone had clipped the audio of Wesley's voicemail to a different parent and posted it under the original video. That is when the first comment about Hadley and Sons appeared. It was from a man whose son had played on the Pirates the previous season. His comment said, "Honestly, the way the Hadley family acts at this league makes more sense when you realize they sponsor half the teams and nobody asked how." 28 likes in the first hour. I did not write that comment. I had not posted any of my evidence. But the question had been hanging in the air for 2 seasons, and somebody else asked it for me. Within the next 2 hours, 3 more parents added details. One mother remembered Wesley pushing the board to vote his own son onto the All-Star roster the previous June, even though the kid hadn't qualified by attendance. Another father pointed out that the Hawks had gotten new helmets mid-season while the Bears had been told there was no equipment budget. A third mother, who worked at the Mansfield dental practice listed in Wesley's records, posted a single sentence under her account. "We don't sponsor youth sports." I would know. I do the books. That comment got 41 likes in 20 minutes. She deleted it an hour later, probably because somebody at her office told her to. By then, every parent in the league had screenshotted. By noon, the original clip from the banquet had been viewed in 8 separate group chats and 1 neighborhood Facebook page. By 1 o'clock, somebody had put together a side-by-side image. On the left, Wesley's older boy in a brand-new Hawks uniform holding the season tickets. On the right, Owen holding the snapped plastic medal, my hand in the frame. Underneath, a single line, same family, same banquet, same night. That image made it onto a regional sports parents page that covers 4 counties. I learned later that Wesley spent that afternoon in his shop with the bay doors closed. Brielle drove there at 3 o'clock to bring him lunch. He was sitting on a stack of tires, looking at his phone. He had not opened the lunch. The board meeting was that night at 7 o'clock. I went. I sat in the 3rd row. Owen sat next to me with his Nintendo and his headphones on because I did not want him left at home alone. Ramon was there. Janet Ortiz was there. 2 other board members. And Wesley, in the same blazer, looking like a man who had not eaten in 12 hours. The first half of the meeting was procedural. The clips were played, all 3 of them, on a laptop with the speakers turned all the way up. Wesley was asked if the man speaking was his father. He said yes. He was asked if he had been present. He said yes. He was asked why he had not intervened. He said it was a family matter. Janet wrote that down word for word. Then she asked him a different question. She asked him about Hadley and Sons. Wesley's face did the thing it had been doing for 48 hours, the thing where it rearranged itself in slow motion. Janet had brought a folder. Inside the folder were the league's sponsorship records, 3 years of them. She read out the totals. Hadley and Sons had paid $19,200 in sponsorships across 3 seasons. She had also brought, and this is the part that ended him, a public records pull from the Ohio Secretary of State on the registration of his business. It listed his revenue bracket. The bracket did not match the sponsorship total. She asked him where the money came from. Wesley said it came from client referrals. Janet asked him to name 3. He named 1, a dental practice in Mansfield. That was the same name on one of the photographs in my folder. I had a photo of an invoice from that dental practice paid out to Hadley and Sons for fleet maintenance. Hadley and Sons does not maintain fleets. It does brakes and tires for civilians. The dental practice did not own a fleet. The invoice was for $4,800. It had been paid the same week as a sponsorship payment. I had not given my photographs to anyone. I did not have to. The board had subpoena-equivalent authority within the league for sponsorship audits. They had been quietly auditing him for 6 months. He had been routing money from somewhere through his shop and into the league sponsorship system to inflate his standing on the board. The board had been waiting for a reason to escalate. The clip from the banquet was the reason. He was suspended from the board pending investigation. His coaching credentials were pulled the same night. The Hawks would finish the season under an interim coach. Janet shook my hand on the way out and said, "Your son's medal is in my office. I'll have it couriered tomorrow. I want to talk about my parents." The morning after the board meeting, my mother called me 11 times. I answered the 11th because Owen had asked, gently, if Grandma was okay. He is 8. He still asked. She did not apologize. She told me I had embarrassed the family. She told me my father was not well. She told me Wesley was going to lose everything because of me. I let her get to the end of the speech. Then I asked her one question. I asked her where she had gotten the gold bracelet. There was a long pause. She said it was a gift. I told her I knew where it came from. I told her I knew about the second mortgage on the house. I told her I had bought the paper from First Bellington Credit Union 18 months earlier when the loan went 60 days delinquent, and the credit union was offloading distress paper to local buyers. I told her I owned the note. She did not believe me at first. She told me to stop lying. I emailed her the loan transfer documents while she was still on the phone. I had been holding them for a year and a half. I had bought the second mortgage for 41 cents on the dollar. The remaining balance was just under $38,000. The reason I had bought it was that I was afraid my parents were going to lose the house and Owen would lose the only grandparents he had. And I had thought, in the part of my brain that was still hoping, that I could quietly carry that mortgage for them and never tell them. That night at the banquet, when my father said what he said, I stopped wanting to carry it. I told my mother I was not foreclosing. I told her she would not be on the street. I told her the note was being assigned to a payment plan administered by a local attorney, and the payments would come out of her Social Security every month, and the term was extended to 30 years, and at her age the payoff date was after her actuarial life expectancy. I told her she would be making payments to her son's holding company for the rest of her life, and the gold bracelet she had given to a 6-year-old who had never picked up a bat was going to be paid for in installments by the same account she had used to pay for it. I told her the bracelet had cost $1,180. I told her I knew that because I had pulled the credit card statement when I bought the second mortgage. The credit card was secured against the same property. She hung up. 2 days later, my father called. He used a tone of voice I had not heard since I was 12. He told me he had been wrong. He told me he was sorry. He asked if Owen could come to the house that Sunday. I told him no. I told him Owen had a real medal coming. I told him the medal was going to be hung in our hallway and not in his. I told him he could write Owen a letter by hand on paper, and I would read it first, and if it was good enough, I would put it in a drawer for Owen to read when he was 18. He asked if I would consider Christmas. I told him I would consider Christmas when Christmas came. The day after that conversation, Ramon came by the shop. He brought coffee. He sat on the workbench and watched me sand a cabinet door for a while before he said anything. He told me the league had received 7 written complaints about Wesley in the last 48 hours. Not from the banquet. From things parents had been holding on to for 2 and 3 years. A coach who had been pushed off the Hawks bench because Wesley wanted his son to start. A mother whose daughter had been moved off the all-star pitching rotation in favor of a kid Wesley sponsored. A grandfather who had paid for a sponsorship plaque that never got installed because Wesley quietly redirected the money. Ramon said the district had asked him to put together a timeline. He asked if I could help. I told him I had a folder. He laughed once, short and dry, and said he had figured. I sent him the folder that night. 2 years of dated entries. Photographs of 3 invoices. Screenshots of 2 text threads where Wesley had complained to me, in writing, about Owen's playing time. The text threads were the part that mattered. They were proof that he had a personal motive for what he had been doing on the board. Ramon read every line. He sent the folder to Janet at 11 p.m. with a note that said, "Adding to the file. I want to talk about the twist nobody saw coming." 3 weeks after the banquet, the engraved medal arrived at our house. It came in a small wooden box with a magnetic clasp. The metal was heavier than it had any right to be. Real bronze. Owen's name engraved in cursive. Season MVP, Bellington Bears, the year. On the back, in smaller letters. Voted unanimously by the coaching staff. Inside the box, under the medal, was a folded piece of paper. It was a memo from the league office, dated 4 months earlier. The memo was about a request that had come in from an assistant coach, asking the head coach to reconsider Owen's playing time on the basis of performance concerns. The memo was the head coach's response. The response was a single page. It listed Owen's stats: batting average, on-base percentage, fielding errors, of which there were 3 across the season. The response ended with one sentence: "This player's numbers do not support the concerns raised. The request is denied." I read it twice. I sat down on the kitchen floor. Wesley had been trying to bench my son. For 2 seasons, he had been telling the head coach, in quiet emails, that Owen wasn't performing. He had been hoping to get him moved to a lower division so that Wesley's older boy, who was on the Hawks, would not have to play against him in the cross-division All-Star game where Owen had out-hit him 2 years running. The memo had been included with the medal. By Janet. Without comment, I stood up. I walked into Owen's room. He was reading a book about sharks. I told him his medal was here. He came out and held it for a long time. He turned it over. He read the back. He looked up at me. I said, "It came with a letter for me. Not for you. Just so you know." He said, "Is it good?" I said, "It will be." I walked back to the kitchen. I picked up the memo. I made a copy. I mailed the original to Janet's office with a note that said, "Already had it. Thank you for confirming." The end of this story is short. The Little League District held a disciplinary hearing 6 weeks after the banquet. It was open to parents. I went. Owen did not go, because his real medal was already in our hallway, and he did not need to watch the rest. The hearing was held in the same back room of Donato's. They had moved the buffet table. Wesley sat at the front. He was not wearing the navy blazer. He was wearing a regular shirt. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him look. The findings were read out. Misuse of sponsorship funds, pending criminal referral. Code of conduct violation related to the banquet, separate finding. Stripped of board seat. Stripped of coaching credentials at all levels of Little League, district-wide, permanently. Recommendation to the regional office that he be barred from all youth sports volunteer roles for 10 years. Before the findings were read, 3 parents have been allowed to speak. The first was Tasha, the mother who had filmed the original clip. She kept it short. She said she had been a parent in this league for 9 years, and she had watched too many other parents get pushed around by one family, and she was glad to see the board taking it seriously. The second was the grandfather whose sponsorship plaque had never been installed. He had brought the canceled check. He held it up so the room could see it. He said he was 81 years old, and he had given his money in good faith, and he wanted it back. The board attorney told him there was a process for that. He said he would wait through the process. The third was a woman I had never seen before. She introduced herself as the assistant manager of the Mansfield dental practice. She had driven 45 minutes to be there. She said her practice had been used. She said she had only learned about it 3 weeks ago, and she had brought every record she had. She set a manila folder on the table. She did not look at Wesley once. Janet read the findings without looking up. When she was done, she folded the paper, slid it into a folder, and said, "This concludes the matter." Wesley stood up. He looked at me from across the room. He opened his mouth. I shook my head once. He closed his mouth. He walked out of Donato's the same way I had walked out 6 weeks earlier, except he did it alone, and there was no one on his hip and no one waiting in the parking lot. I stayed in my seat for a few minutes after the room cleared. I looked at the buffet table where my mother had pulled the plastic medal out of the side drawer. I thought about the sound it had made when I snapped it in half. Janet walked over. She sat down in the chair next to mine. She did not say anything for a while. Then she told me the regional office had already accepted the findings, and the criminal referral had gone out that afternoon. She told me the district attorney's office in Akron had a unit that handled small business financial fraud, and they took these cases seriously when the money moved through a registered nonprofit, which is what the league technically was. She told me Wesley would probably not see jail. He would see fines, restitution, and a permanent record. She said the case would close inside a year. I thank her. She told me not to thank her. She told me she had been waiting to read those findings out for 2 seasons, and the only thing she was sorry about was that it had taken a child holding a plastic medal to get there. She stood up. She walked out. I sat for 1 more minute. Then I drove home. Owen's real medal is on a hook in our hallway, at his eye level, where he can see it every morning when he leaves for school. He touches it sometimes, not for luck, just to know it is there. He has not asked about his grandparents in 2 months. I did not bring him up. The credit on my mother's mortgage payment came in last Thursday, automatically, the way it will every month for the rest of her life. I did not open the envelope when it arrives. I just file it. Rayan mailed the gold bracelet back to my mother the week after the hearing. I know this because my mother tried to mail it to me with a note that said it was meant for the right grandchild. I sent it back unopened. 3 weeks later, I heard from a neighbor that Rayan had stopped speaking to our parents because she was tired of being the one who had to defend them. Her husband had told her to pick. She picked her own kitchen table. I do not know if that is good news or bad news. I have stopped sorting the news about my family into those 2 boxes. The Bellington Bears start their next season in March. Owen has already been moved up to the older division. He is the youngest kid on the roster. The head coach asked me last week if I would step up to assistant coach for the Hawks, since the position was open. I told him I would think about it. I'm still thinking.